She's already told you she's interested. She just didn't use words. That is not a figure of speech. At some point in the recent past, maybe last week, maybe more recently than that, a woman communicated something real to you through her body, and you received none of it. Not because you weren't paying attention, not because the signals were invisible, but because you were trained, like most men, to listen for the wrong things. You were waiting for something she said, something direct, something that translated cleanly. And while you were waiting for that, something entirely different was happening right in front of you. Here is what nobody tells men about female attraction. The clearest signals a woman sends are almost never verbal. They are physical, they are involuntary, and they happen below the level of her own awareness. She is not performing them for you. She is not even deciding to do them, which means they cannot be faked, and they cannot be suppressed, not completely. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what to look for. 8 specific things a woman touches when she is drawn to someone, what each one means, why her body does it, and how to tell the difference between habit and signal. Not as a list to memorize, as a framework that, once you understand it, becomes automatic. The question I want you to hold on to as we move through this together is simple. What has already happened around you that you didn't know how to read? The first place her body betrays her has nothing to do with you. It's what she does to herself, right there in front of you, that you've been overlooking. When emotional intensity rises, when the nervous system registers something significant, the body responds by reaching for comfort. This is not a conscious choice. It is a function of the autonomic nervous system, the part of the brain that regulates everything below the level of deliberate thought. And one of the most instinctive self-soothing gestures available to the human body is touching the neck. The neck is not a random target. It sits directly over the carotid artery, one of the main pulse points in the body. When we are emotionally activated, blood pressure changes, heart rate shifts, and the neck becomes a place the hand moves toward automatically, the way you might press a palm against a warm surface without deciding to. The body is, in a very literal sense, checking its own pulse. Now, here is what matters for you. Not all neck touching signals the same thing. Anxiety and attraction both activate this gesture, which is why context is everything. The anxious neck touch tends to be quick, a rapid press, a rub, a release. It looks like someone trying to interrupt discomfort. The attracted neck touch is different. It is slower. It tends to use the fingertips rather than the full palm. It lingers for a second or two longer than it needs to. And it often happens during a specific kind of moment, when you have said something that landed, when there is a pause in the conversation that carries some weight, when she is looking at you and deciding something she has not yet said out loud. You might be thinking, how am I supposed to tell those apart in real time? And that is a fair question. The answer is that you do not read one gesture in isolation. You read the pattern around it. If the neck touch comes during a moment of ease, not conflict, not uncertainty, not social awkwardness, and if it is accompanied by continued eye contact rather than a look away, the signal is almost always attraction, not anxiety. Most men who notice a neck touch at all assume it means nothing. They file it under nervous habit and move on. That is the first piece of information they did not receive. The neck is where the signal starts, but there is a place she touches that communicates something even more specific, and it happens almost every time she wants you to notice her. You have watched a woman run her hand through her hair 100 times. What you probably never noticed was what happened in the 2 seconds after. Hair touching in the presence of someone who is registered as a potential mate is one of the oldest documented preening behaviors in human behavioral research. Primates do it. Every species that engages in mate selection does some version of it. When the brain identifies someone as significant, it sends a quiet instruction to the body, present well. And one of the most immediate responses to that instruction is a self-grooming gesture, smoothing hair, adjusting its position, drawing the hand through it in a way that draws attention to the face and neck. But here's the part that changes how you read this gesture entirely. The touch itself is only half of the signal. The other half is what her eyes do immediately after. When a woman touches her hair out of attraction, not habit, not distraction, not a genuine need to adjust something that came loose. There is almost always a glance that follows within 1 to 2 seconds, not a long look, a quick check. She is not staring at you waiting for a reaction. She is briefly, almost imperceptibly, confirming that you saw it. That glance is the secondary signal. That glance is where most men should be looking, and almost no one is. The distracted hair touch has no glance. It happens when she is thinking about something else entirely. She might not even know she did it. The attracted hair touch is followed by that quiet, fast, self-conscious look in your direction, and then, often, a small shift in her posture, a slight straightening, a breath that resets her composure. Of course, a single hair touch with a glance after it does not constitute a declaration. Context matters, as it always does. But once you begin watching for the glance rather than the gesture itself, you will start to see the signal clearly. The glance after the hair touch is her checking, but there is another gesture where she is not checking at all. She already knows you are watching, and that is precisely the point. There are gestures a woman makes that are not nervous habits and are not conscious flirtation. They live in a third category, and that category is the most honest signal she can give you. When a woman touches her own collarbone or traces her upper chest lightly during a conversation, it does not usually register as significant. It looks like an absent gesture. It looks like nothing. But what is actually happening is that the subconscious mind, the part that operates entirely below deliberate awareness, has identified you as significant, and the body has begun doing something about it without waiting for permission. The psychology here is specific. When the brain registers attraction, it does not just trigger emotion. It triggers action preparation. Small, quiet impulses toward approach, toward contact, toward closing the distance between two people. Most of those impulses never reach full expression. They get filtered by social awareness, by uncertainty, by the part of us that calculates risk before acting. But the body finds a way to express the energy somewhere, and the collarbone, a visible, central, slightly vulnerable part of the body, becomes a focus point. The hand moves there. It draws a slow line along the bone or rests at the base of the throat. And in doing so, it creates a visual focal point that the subconscious is directing attention toward. This is not seduction as a strategy. This is the body advertising before the conscious mind has decided anything. The context where this signal appears most reliably is during moments of conversational intimacy, a deeper exchange, a moment of sustained eye contact, something said that carried more weight than small talk. The more emotionally engaged she is in a specific moment of conversation, the more likely this gesture is to appear. Before we move forward, there is one layer here that most explanations skip over entirely: the absence of the glance. Unlike the hair touch, the collarbone gesture is rarely followed by a checking look in your direction. She is not monitoring your reaction. The gesture is too instinctive for that kind of self-consciousness. Which means when you see it, you are seeing something she is not curating for you. You are seeing something that simply happened. That gesture is about drawing your attention somewhere. The next one is different. It is about connection, and it involves something she owns, not something she is. This one is not on any list you have read before, and once you see it, you will understand why it is one of the most unguarded signals she can show you. When a woman is attracted to someone and the impulse to make physical contact arises, which it does, quietly, without announcement, that impulse has to go somewhere. Often it cannot go directly toward the person. It is too early. She is not certain enough. The social calculation has not resolved yet. So the hands redirect. They move to the nearest available object that can absorb the energy. And if she is wearing jewelry, that is almost always where they go. A necklace turned slowly between the fingers. A bracelet rotated around the wrist in an unhurried loop. A ring being slid off and back on in a motion that repeats itself. These are not fidgeting behaviors. Fidgeting is fast, irregular, and driven by discomfort. What you are looking for here is something slower and more rhythmic, a motion that has a quality of absorption to it, as though the hands are occupied so that the rest of her can remain composed. Psychologists refer to this as displacement behavior, when an impulse that cannot be acted on directly finds an alternative outlet. The jewelry becomes a proxy for the contact she is not yet making. The detail that separates habit from signal here is speed combined with eye contact. When the jewelry touch is driven by anxiety, it tends to be quick and avoidant. The hands move, the eyes look away. The whole gesture is one of self-interruption. When it is driven by attraction, the motion is slower, more sustained, and it frequently occurs while she is looking directly at you. The hands are occupied. The attention is fully on you. That combination, slow hands, direct gaze, is the tell. Objects can carry the signal, but nothing carries it more directly than when she makes contact with something that belongs to you. We are at the midpoint of these 8 signals, and this is where things shift, because the first 4 were all about what she does to herself. This one is about when she reaches toward you. Remember what I said at the beginning, that the signals are already present in your life, and the question is whether you know how to read them. We are getting to the part of that now where you will start recognizing specific moments from your own recent past. When a woman reaches across the physical space between you and touches something that belongs to your world, not your body, not yet, but your sleeve, your watch, your phone that she asked to look at, a book or object on the table in front of you, she is doing something the brain calculates unconsciously before it happens. She is crossing a threshold. Personal space is a real, measurable thing. Research in proxemics, the study of how humans use physical space in relation to each other, consistently shows that voluntary entry into another person's intimate space, roughly 18 inches or less, is one of the most reliable indicators of positive emotional orientation. The brain does not let us cross that boundary accidentally around people we feel neutral about. It either calculates risk and stays back, or it clears the threshold and moves forward. When she reaches for something of yours, she is moving forward. And the detail that separates functional reach from attraction-driven reach is what happens after the contact. A functional reach is quick, purposeful, and followed by physical withdrawal. She gets what she needed and the distance is restored. An attraction-driven reach lingers. The fingertips stay a moment longer than the action required. She leans slightly closer in the process, and when she leans back, the distance between you is, almost imperceptibly, less than it was before. You may also notice that she creates reasons to reach, questions that require her to look at your phone screen with you, comments about something you are wearing that give her an excuse to touch the fabric, observations about something near you that pull her body toward your space. These are not accidents. They are the unconscious mind finding openings. One instance of this is worth noticing. A pattern of it across a single conversation is one of the clearest things she can show you. Reaching towards something you own is significant. But there is a version of this that is even more direct, and it is something she does to you, not your belongings. You have probably noticed when a woman touches your arm. Most men have. What almost no man has ever paid attention to is what she does in the 3 seconds after, because that is when she is actually reading you. The arm touch or shoulder touch during conversation is the most common direct contact signal in early attraction, and it is also the most misread. Most men experience it as either pleasant or confusing and then move on. They miss the actual communication that was happening. Here is the framework. When a woman in early attraction makes light physical contact with a man, she is not expressing something fully formed. She is testing the ground. The touch is a probe sent into your nervous system to read how you receive it. If you stiffen, if you look startled, if you pull back even slightly, the signal registers as unwelcome and retreats. If you remain relaxed, if your eye contact holds or deepens, if your body stays open and does not flinch, the signal registers as safe, and it escalates. This means the touch itself is only the opening move. Your response is the conversation. And most men, in their surprise or pleasure at being touched, respond to the touch rather than the moment, and miss the window where she is actually reading them. What you want to notice is not how the touch felt. What you want to notice is her face and her body in the 2 to 3 seconds after her hand withdraws. Is she looking at you with slightly more directness than before? Is there a small smile that she then suppresses? Does her posture stay open, or does she create a small closing gesture, crossing her arms, leaning back, as though something did not go the way she hoped? That is the read. That is the actual exchange that happened. Now, context matters enormously here. A single arm touch in a professional setting or a group conversation means far less than 3 arm touches across 20 minutes of private conversation. The frequency escalation is where the signal becomes unmistakable. Each repetition is a confirmation that the previous one was received well. By the third or fourth instance, she has already made a decision she has not said out loud. How she responds to your reaction tells you where you stand. But there is one more category of touch, and it only happens when the attraction has moved past the testing phase entirely. Most of the signals in this video appear in the early minutes of an interaction. This one does not. This one only shows up when something has already shifted. Face touching is a self-intimacy gesture. The face is the most guarded and personal part of the body. It is how we are recognized, how we are read, how we communicate everything we feel, whether we intend to or not. We do not expose it casually to people who feel unsafe or unfamiliar. When a woman begins touching her own face in an unhurried, relaxed way during a conversation with you, resting her chin on her hand, pressing her fingertips lightly to her cheek, running a finger slowly along her lip, what her nervous system is signaling is that it has down-regulated. That is a technical way of saying she is no longer in first impression mode. She is no longer running the background calculation of how she appears or what impression she is making. She has landed in the conversation. She is simply present with you. In a new interaction, that level of ease is not a default state. It has to be earned, which means when you see it, you are seeing evidence that something has already happened between you. Some degree of trust, some degree of comfort, some recognition of you as someone her nervous system has cleared as safe. The distinction between the anxious face touch and the attracted face touch is important. Anxiety tends to produce covering gestures, a hand over the mouth, fingers pressed below the nose, movements that partially conceal the face rather than settle into it. The attracted face touch is open. The chin rests in the palm. The fingers touch the cheek without covering it. The gesture has a quality of stillness rather than interruption. That signal tells you that something real is happening between you. But the 8th signal, the one I have saved for last, is different from all of them, because it does not happen when she is comfortable. It happens when she is afraid of how much she likes you. Every signal before this one was her body expressing what she felt. This last one is different. It is her body trying to hide it. When attraction reaches a certain intensity, when it crosses from interesting into something that feels genuinely significant, something that carries a little risk, the impulse to act on it becomes strong enough that it has to be actively managed. And the hands are where that management most often shows up. What you are looking for is this: a woman who holds her own hands during a moment of closeness with you, who laces her fingers together in her lap, who presses her palms against each other with a quiet, almost imperceptible pressure, who does some version of containing herself physically in a moment where the alternative might be reaching toward you. Behavioral researchers describe this as suppression behavior, when an impulse that has reached threshold gets overridden by conscious control and the body redirects the energy inward rather than outward. She does not reach for you. She holds herself instead. The hands turn toward each other because they are not yet allowed to turn toward you. This signal appears in specific moments. During a sustained pause where both of you are looking at each other and neither person has spoken. After something was said that created more intimacy than the conversation had been carrying until that point. When she laughs and then suddenly pulls back, not because she is uncomfortable, but because she caught herself being more unguarded than she intended. The common mistake here is to read self-containment as disinterest. It looks on the surface like someone who is calm and in control. And she is in control. That is the point. She is working to stay in control because something about this moment with you is making that difficult. This is the most honest signal on this entire list. It is not a display. It is the opposite of a display. It is attraction that has become strong enough to require management, visible only in the physical effort of managing it. You were told at the beginning of this video that there was something already happening around you that you could not see. This is often what it looks like. Not drama, not declaration. A woman sitting quietly, holding her own hands, looking at you. 8 signals, 1 through 8. And if you look at them together rather than separately, you start to see the real pattern underneath all of them. They are not performances. They are not strategies. Every single signal on this list originates below the level of deliberate thought, in the nervous system, in the part of the brain that operates before language, before decision, before she has consciously acknowledged anything about how she feels. Which means what you have learned today is not how to decode what a woman is doing. It is how to read what she is not trying to say. That is a different kind of knowledge. It does not require you to analyze every gesture or run a checklist through your head every time you speak to someone. It requires you to slow down enough to observe what is already happening, which, as it turns out, is something most men have simply never been taught to do. You do not need to overanalyze this. One gesture in isolation is rarely definitive. A pattern across a conversation is something else entirely. I want to hear from you. Which of these 8 signals have you noticed in a woman recently? And looking back now, do you think you misread what it meant? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. If this kind of genuine, grounded insight into female psychology is what you want more of, subscribing means you will see it. This channel exists for men who want to understand what is actually happening, not what they were told to look for. In the next video, I'm going to show you exactly what to do when you start seeing these signals, because recognizing them is only half of it. The other half is what you say next, and most men get that part completely wrong.